Okay. So this is class 7, and this is a class in which a few of you are going to be speaking on Max Beckman, Christian Schad, Felix Nussbaum, who we didn't get to. And then a little later in the class, not too much later, I'm going to introduce the 3 photographers, okay? And so let's start with, oh God. Oh, is Frank here? Oh yeah, Frank, here you go. Okay, so I'm going to switch the screen and we'll start with Frank, and let's see how this goes. Okay. Okay, so I'll try this again.
Yeah, I was very taken with the story and the work of Felix Nussbaum, and I chose
wait a
2
second.
of his paintings.
Frank, wait a second. Okay. Share screen. Let's try this again. Okay. Okay. Frank.
All set?
Yes. Yes.
Okay. The 2 paintings that I chose by Felix Nussbaum, Death Triumphant from April of 1944 is the painting on the left, and The Damned from January of 1944 is the painting on the right. And they're the result of an amazing force of will by an artist working under difficult circumstances and hard to imagine amounts of stress. Both are dark and ominous and give clear signs the artist could see the inevitable fate for him and his family. Given that the painting on the right was finished first in January of 44, I'll talk about that first. The Damned is a work finished in January of 1944, and it's an oil on canvas, and it's 39 by 60 inches. It shows Nussbaum, along with others awaiting their deaths. In the middle, right section, is a parade of skeletons, dressed in black, carrying coffins out. The street behind them is empty, with flagpoles flying torn, black pieces of fabric as if to indicate the murderous and evil regime that was in power. The sky is ominous, with ravens or crows flying in the distance. On the brick wall behind the figure in black, it's a little dark in this representation. There's a figure in black with his head bent. There's an image of an adult-sized skeleton, as well as a child-sized skeleton, playing a marching drum, the ominous drum cadence of a march toward death. And I think you could probably see it better on a bigger reproduction or in a book reproduction. The artist can be seen in the lower central part of the painting, standing next to pieces of wood, looking as he appeared in his work Self-Portrait with Jewish Identity Card, having a similar expression and turn of his head. After seeing photos of Felix's wife, Felka Platek, I feel it's possible that his wife is standing beside him, looking thin and distraught with whitish hair. However, I haven't seen this confirmed anywhere else. The people around Nussbaum look depleted, emaciated, worn down, sad, frightened, silent. One figure on the bottom left appears to be giving a blessing. Nussbaum had seen firsthand what was happening to people brought to the camps during the time of his first imprisonment in a detention camp in France. The painting on the left is called Death Triumphant. It's oil on canvas, and it's 39 by 59 inches. It depicts an apocalyptic landscape full of debris with a group of skeletons or skeletal figures playing musical instruments. My initial thought at first seeing this painting was to wonder what sounds Nussbaum was attempting to convey with this group of instruments.
Mm.
It was similar instrumentation to a New Orleans funeral band with clarinets, trumpet, bass drum, snare drum, even violin, but that clearly wasn't the sound that this picture is meant to evoke. It could also be referencing a German bar band or street band. Either way, the title of the painting, Death Triumphant, refers to a music being played that is likely upbeat, but in a menacing, demonic sort of way, more like danse macabre, or perhaps just noise. The organist behind the skeleton playing the bass drum and the flute player with the white angel wings do not appear to be reveling in the sound, as the other skeletal musicians are. The person who's depicted as playing the organ has been described as Nussbaum himself, with features that are similar to self-portraits and other works by the artist. The sky is cloudy, dark, and smoky. The flying kites have faces with varying kinds of expressions that would indicate the constant surveillance that people lived under all over Europe during these dangerous and mistrustful times. The debris spread around the ground in the mid and lower half of the painting include various broken objects, things from Felix's everyday life. His wife's tailor's dummy, in the background to the right, his father's car, pieces of artwork, playing cards, dice, a telephone, and a piece of sheet music, but the first few bars of a song called The Lambeth Walk from a musical called Me and My Girl. This English song was so popular at the time that it was played in Nazi Germany while also being condemned as Jewish.
Hmm.
Among the ruins at the bottom left corner of the painting is the statue of blindfolded justice lying broken on the ground. In the bottom right-hand corner, there's a calendar with the date April 18th, 1944, which is believed to be the date the painting was finished. He and his wife Falco were arrested a few months later, and Felix died in August of 1944. The reality of what he and his family and those around them faced was clear to Nussbaum. As an artist, he was able to make it remarkably clear to those of us generations removed exactly how harrowing and devastating it was to be that. And that's it.
Frank, this is terrifically well written.
Oh, thank you.
Really terrific. Um, uh, Force of will, very striking. And I'm not sure if you, when you introduced yourself to start with, you spoke about what you do, what you did. And Frank's background is in music and in teaching music to little children. And the musical themes in the two paintings are very striking. And I wonder if that had something to do with your choosing these two.
It's possible. I didn't think about that when I was choosing them, but it really became clear that there was something to say about each painting musically, and it just seemed like a natural thing to bring out. Despite all of the devastation, it's amazing that music is a part of it.
Well, I'm not a composer, but if I was a composer, I would say that there's a lot to think about in these two images in terms of music.
Yeah, I would agree with that. That's an interesting. There's so much to talk about. It's
And you know, these two pictures are eerily connected with current events, today's current events,
Mhm.
eerily. Um, this is very well written.
Thanks, Simon.
I wanted to ask, ask Frank if there was a source for some of the references in the death triumphant, whether you were able to pick that up from any readings or.
I did look some things up, and I was able to get my hands on a book that Simon had recommended. I think in the first, maybe it was either the first class or it was the class where you introduced Nussbaum, Simon, Art in Exile, which is a fairly good-sized book on Nussbaum and all of his work. I think it was from a big exhibit of his work. And there were some interesting things mentioned in that book about the materials. In fact, there's much more about the materials lying on the ground in disarray in Death Triumphant. There was much more to say about that, and I really only picked a few things to mention given the length of the presentation.
This is the book that I mentioned, called by it's Overlook Press.
Right, that's right.
Yeah, that's an excellent book.
It is.
I'm reminded that I should mention that again. It's a book of maybe 400 or 500 pages, and it has many reproductions of other works done at the same period of time, and they juxtapose the images very well.
Mm-hmm.
And the book feels to me like a labor of love.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
The
So,
reproductions are really great too. You can really see details.
so you got it online then?
Yes, actually, the New York Public Library had it.
Yeah, yeah, that's great.
Simon, may I ask a question or just one comment?
Yeah.
The painting on the right, I always thought that perhaps Nussbaum is in it twice. That the man in the cart, standing in the cart, looks like the organ painter, a player from the organist with the bones, which I think was Nussbaum. But then on the bottom, he's looking out at us. So I thought he's both in it being taken away to his death, but also looking at us as witnesses or saying, look at this, or to get our attention.
I think I agree. I think I agree with you.
Yeah,
Yeah.
they do
Um,
look alike.
I want to go on because
Interesting.
we're gonna get a time issue here. So Mary, you're the second. You're the second.
Wow.
Yeah, the picture on the left is Egon Schiele was born in 1890 in Tulln, Austria-Hungary. His father was a station master for the railways, and when he was a young boy, he obsessively drew trains. He had 3 sisters, and they often modeled for him. There's some reports that you had mentioned that with his younger sister, his relationship was incestuous. When Schiele was 15, his father died from syphilis, and he became the ward of his uncle, Leopold Sihacek. His uncle supported his interest in art, and he attended the Academy of Fine Arts in Vienna. Gustav Klimt encouraged him to exhibit his work, and by 1910, Schiele began to work on the nude form in an explicitly sexual manner. Klimt also introduced him to the 17-year-old Walburga Nusel, also known as Wally. She had been a model for Klimt and reportedly his lover. Schiele and Wally became intimately involved, and she was his principal model for 4 years. She lived with him and helped to arrange his life. They moved out of Vienna to a provincial town, and scandals involving young girls ensued. Schiele spent 24 days in jail after he was charged with public immorality for exposing young girls to his work that a judge deemed pornographic. Eventually, Wally and Schiele returned to Vienna. In 1914, he painted Lovers, Man and Woman. It is an oil on canvas measuring approximately 47 by 55 inches. Schiele staged and painted this self-portrait using a mirror. One is immediately drawn to his red lips and dark, steady gaze. He is looking at himself. It is the end of an ecstasy. Has he just dismounted her? She is on her knees, gripping her hands, perhaps trying to get a hold of herself. She could also be praying or pleading for mercy. Supposedly, Sheila has just informed Wally of his decision to marry Edith Harms, a respectable woman from a middle-class family who lived across the street from his studio. He suggests that she can continue to be his mistress and they will spend 6 weeks together every summer. Wally, furious at this betrayal, will leave him and he will never see her again. In the work, the woman's skin is cool and translucent, revealing her vascularized form, the connective tissues and muscles with seeping blues and reds of emotional intensity. She is defeated. Is she dying? And there is Sheila, with his shirt slipping down his back, exposing a gash. I don't know if we could see it in this print, but there's a gash that opens into his spine. And there is another wound on the front of his torso. Could it be that Wally has torn open his flesh with her nails? He is a dark and warm creature, subterranean, maybe from the deep sea. On his right inner knee is a shell, a barnacle, and with his oversized crustacean claws, is he going to contain Wally, or is he trying to free himself from her and release her? There is a sunlight in the upper left corner. Here is the landscape, the white sheets cresting into a snow-capped mountain peak with the undulating hills and the darkening and lighter colors of their bodies. In the bottom of the picture, we see linear gradations, a geologic cross-section of the bedrock. What lies beneath the surface? It is a personal inner landscape. It is a landscape, portrait, and details, all forms synchronized.
Terrific.
His just one or two more things. This work to me is a dark and sorrowful tale of emotional devastation. And just a note, I think most of you know, but Wally became a nurse in the military in World War I, and she died of scarlet fever in 1917. And Sheila was called into active duty in World War I to Prague 3 days after his wedding to Edith Harms. In 1917, they returned to Vienna, and in 1918, the Spanish flu pandemic struck. Edith was 6 months pregnant when she died, and Sheila died 3 days later. He was 28 years old.
Mm. Mary, do you realize that this painting is on exhibit now?
Yes, I went and saw it.
Oh, okay,
Yeah.
good.
It's really something to see.
Really something to see. I think it's a spectacular painting.
Yeah.
It's a difficult painting, but I think it's spectacular. Now,
Yeah.
you see the way the painting looks here on your presentation with the white behind it.
Yeah.
Okay. At the museum,
Yeah.
they have a very fancy wood panels behind it. That room was probably a library.
Mm-hmm.
So if they listened to Simon, they would paint all those wood panels white. Okay, or put something simply behind this painting that would be like white linen or a light color, because it seems to me, to my eye, that the wood panels take out the color. I don't know if you agree, but that's what I think.
Yeah.
But I mean, it's quite striking. It's very striking.
It's very bold and unapologetic, and it's a very intense piece. Anyway, that was like a personal battle, I think, for Egon Schiele. And, I was just taken with it. And then I chose the second picture, which it was really hard for me. It's unthinkable, is basically what it is. The whole thing is unthinkable. So I went out on a limb, and I wrote like just a verse or a poem about it. And it's called Catching the Last Train. There is music and dance in the stockroom that you pull behind your eyes. On the shelves are pigments, red and yellow ochre, brushes. The scent of turpentine fills the air. The stacks of reels, the recollections. Here is one, your father's gleaming eyes as he speaks of Vincent's paintings. On a canvas leaning against the wall, a young boy clings to the organ grinder's leg. Behind them, sunflowers rise into a darkening sky. Another canvas, the manifestation of those serene days at the seaside, painting the portrait of a family. Now the storm is descending. Shredded black flags flap wildly in the wind. Blood seeps from the buildings along Rue Archimé, I don't know how to speak French. Before leaving, Felix replaces the tin pipes of the organ with the bones he has carved. Is this the complete absence of the divine infinite light? With a soft elegy, he wraps the green cloak around the music box. He will travel with his beloved and reunite with his family, his mother and father, his brother's wife and child. Here comes the hurdy-gurdy man. I have a hard time studying this man because it's so painful. Sorry, I lose it.
No, that's terrific. What you wrote is very touching, really very moving.
Yeah, it's unthinkable, right? And like you said, it's going on in the world now. So it's really
it's just on and on.
Yeah.
But you should feel what you feel. It really, it's beautiful. Really beautiful. Thank you, Mary. Thanks.
Thank you.
Oh, just one last thing. In the Sheila one, you kind of described it as a landscape, and with hills and subterranean and all that, and I really liked that. It became like metaphorical and symbolic. Very nicely done. Yeah. So the next one that I have here is Kristen, and that's these two.
So these two pieces were in the exhibit at the Noya. And the one on the left is called Evening, Self-Portrait with the Battenbergs from 1916. And it's about 9x7. And the one on the right is called Madhouse from 1919. And it's about 10x12 inches. And both of them are dry point in a whole room of images like that. How can one capture looking or not looking, being seen or not being seen? Max Beckmann has created intense moods for and with these figures. Much of the emotional state in these pieces seems to be a result of the way Beckmann has portrayed the eyes for each person in these drawings. One can imagine how they might feel bunched up together in these spaces that seem so uninviting. Both have figures that are framed in ways that make them appear compressed into the space, only showing small parts of their bodies, cutting off portions. Beckmann has piled them on top of one another, making them feel jammed into these spaces. These images feel discombobulated, yet organized and arranged all at the same time, as do the lines which with they are drawn. These are not realistic looking scenes. The bodies and their features are distorted. It does not appear that anyone is interacting with anyone else. Why are they all here? They all just seem to exist tightly, yet in isolation on the same page. It seems that Beckmann has paid very careful attention to each person's hands, gestures, and facial expressions, and especially to the eyes of each figure. Some of the eyes even appear to be scratched out by Beckmann's pen. Only the central figure in Evening has eyes that are open and seem somewhat realistic. She appears to be kind, tired, and gazing off at something, mournfully or exhaustedly, but her eyes are the most carefully drawn and detailed of any in these works. The figure on the upper left in Evening, who is likely Beckmann, appears perhaps to be looking at this woman, but through eyes that are very disorganized and strange, with wildly drawn lines. But it is unclear if he is actually looking at anything at all. The man in the foreground has closed eyes as if he is sleeping. It is difficult to tell if there are any eyes at all on the man who lurks behind the woman. Even the cat has wide open, gazing eyes. Madhouse is a somewhat cartoonish drawing that also seems to express so much with each person's eyes, perhaps because of how few figures there are with open eyes, something that seems very common in so many of Beckmann's works that have multiple figures. Many do not have open eyes or any distinguishable features, and many are hiding their eyes or are facing away. In this piece, most of them have closed or covered eyes, some looking peaceful, some looking anguished or filled with pain. There is a sense of tightness, gripping, hiding. Another figure is wearing glasses through which you cannot discern any eyes, and another is turned with his head hanging down, with his back facing the viewer. Only the small figure crouched in the center seems to be peeking out of one eye, and one must wonder if that is Beckmann himself, taking just a tiny secret look at the world inside the asylum he went to when he had a mental breakdown, maybe wanting to remember a bit of what it was like, but not really. Are these people actually seeing, not wanting to be seen? Are they looking or not wanting to look? Who is seen and who is not?
Terrific.
Nice.
Yeah, really terrific. If you haven't gone to this exhibit, these two prints are in one room with many, many prints that are part of two series. And that room is remarkable. I mean, you could really get a buzz standing there. I mean, it's so intense. Does that make sense, Kristen?
Yes, there was a kind of wildness about the work in that room, and even the way it was placed, all above in high spaces and at eye level. And I think I said this to you, Simon, that I found a lot of the prints they were just crazy with action and figures and movement, and I really liked so many things. And I did realize after the fact that I chose these two, which were much calmer. And maybe it was because I didn't even know what to do with all the energy in those others.
Well, if you talk about blood oxygen, this room is like you can't get more blood oxygen than that room. I mean, it's really, really spectacular. If you're having a kind of lethargic, catatonic day, I would send you a prescription to go to that room.
Yeah, that would wake you up.
Yeah, you did very well. This is very offbeat, very offbeat. I took out a phrase from your essay: discombobulated, but also organized. That's very hard to do. Really, really hard to do. Take it from one who knows.
Yeah, and I feel like in that room, most of those pieces had that feeling
Yeah.
of there was organization to them, but what a mess some of them felt.
Yeah.
Do we know anything about the subjects, about the Bathenbergs in this first picture on the left?
I didn't look anything up about them.
I was curious because that is Philip Mountbatten, Prince Philip's actual name before it was anglicized. It's Bathenberg.
Oh, that is interesting.
I wish I knew the answer to your question. I know that the series is based on two different themes, and but I don't know much more than that. And also the technique in one is lithography, and in the other is etchings. Um, and but the variety of line and the pulse in it is just stunning. Um, okay, so the
What's
next,
oh,
I'm sorry, let's keep going. The next one I have is Kathy.
Good, okay. Uh, First one I have is a Felix Nussbaum self-portrait in the camp. It's oil on panel, 1940, approximately 20 by 16. A German Jew in Belgium in 1940, he was immediately arrested and transported to an internment camp in Saint-Cyprier, where he remained for 9 months before managing to escape with his wife Felke Pietek, obviously the inspiration for his subsequent work. This portrait shocks the woman in the back defecating, the slumped over man who appears to be barely alive. The barbed wire in the distance are not supposed to be the main focus of the work, but you can't take your eyes off of them. The rain trickling down from the dark clouds overhead is hardly visible, but we feel it. Every little ominous detail makes us feel the pain and hopelessness portrayed. This very closely cropped image of the artist is full of bitter determination. His clothes are filthy and torn, and he has clearly experienced the most intolerable and inhumane abuse, yet there is a sustaining strength in his youth. He looks straight at us with a stare full of quiet rage. He's completely aware of the despair surrounding him, yet his face, his eyes, his body language indicate that there is remaining strength left in him. He will fight. He will find a way. His anger will serve him, not defeat him. I love the composition, cropped in a way that brings the subject close enough to touch and feel. Somehow, in spite of all the darkness, misery, and there's a beauty in his stillness and the powerful gaze coming from one visible eye. The shaded left side of his face adds a fierceness and a strength required to survive such circumstances. I can't help but wonder about courage when looking at this work, what courage it took to live through and then to paint it. My other piece is Max Beckman, Self-Portrait with Champagne Glass, 1919, oil on canvas. I learned to love Max Beckman through this class. I suspect it has a lot to do with the way he's creating characters that appeal to me because they seem so theatrical. Who was this fellow and what's he all about? Aside from the technical brilliance Simon pointed out, I see a man out to show how important he is and what fun he's having. He's drinking expensive champagne, we assume. He's well dressed with a bit of an affectation in his right hand and a look on his face that I would interpret as a mixture of flirtatiousness and commanding. Commanding in the sense that he's at the important table in this very posh club, and that only the richest and the in the know people can get into. He appears to be looking at someone in particular in a seductive kind of way. It could be sexual, or it could be someone he assumes is important and worthy of his company. There's definitely a snobbishness about him. He could be making fun of this kind of individual, or maybe he fantasizes about being him once in a while. There's the big-eyed, foolish-looking fellow in the background, who may be symbolic of the foolishness of this lifestyle. I think pretentiousness fills this work. He's trying to impress someone. The fellow in the rear is doing his best to fit in by being overly charming. I've read that the picture frame to the left may be a mirror symbolizing an unflattering look at that society. That the bottle of champagne in the ice bucket resembles the mouth of a gun. I don't see that myself, but if it's a gun, it's pointed at him. Interestingly, I don't relate to this lifestyle personally, but I enjoy observing them as an audience member. And I think Beckman captures them so perfectly. I do indeed appreciate the look he's created for himself with this character. Good looking, he dresses well, he's self-assured, an attention getter. If you're going to create a character for yourself, you might as well make him colorful. That's it.
Um,
A little humor.
very well done. Very well done. Okay, and the last one,
Oh,
oh, I'm sorry, what?
I was going to ask if there are any former smokers in the audience. They observe how he's holding his cigar.
I never smoked a cigar. I did smoke, but not a cigar.
I was told that if you hold your cigarette or cigar between those two fingers, you'll never drop it.
That depends on how good your shape your fingers are in.
And you'll never drop it.
Yeah.
And it was particularly useful if you were on duty and wanted to wake up when the hot ember reached your finger.
Oh,
Let's go on. This is Cynthia. Cynthia here?
Yes, I
Okay,
am. I'm
good,
ready to go.
Good.
All right, this is mine, and I will suggest if anyone can zoom in on their computers at home, please do, particularly for the second image, although it might be a little bit blurred. I'll describe it and you can always go back and look at it later. So I picked these two images, both by Felix Nussbaum, because these are works he created before he left Germany to study in Rome and before he was exiled. So they give us a glimpse of the early Felix Nussbaum before he went into hiding from the Nazis. So this first is called Self-Portrait in a Green Hat from 1927, oil on canvas, and it's small, approximately 16 by 18. And the second is the Folly Square, 1931, and it's quite large, about 3 feet and 2 inches tall and 6.5 feet wide. So it's very large. But I'll start with the self-portrait. Inspired by Van Gogh's self-portrait in a gray felt hat of 40 years earlier, this Nussbaum self-portrait seems to radiate the energy of its 23-year-old artist. In dapper dress, reflecting his comfortable middle-class status, Nussbaum looks intently out at us, his brows slightly knitted. Yet while his gaze is unmoving and locks our attention, his visage seems brimming with life. Vibrant brushstrokes of pink, purple, peach, and tan create a sense of constant motion as they seemingly sweep up his left cheek from his chin and cross his forehead before dashing down his nose and the right side of his face. And what a hat! Its emerald green is so brilliant that it glows. An aura of the palest blue-green surrounds it, particularly on the left and top. Its green reflection tints Felix Nussbaum's forehead, hair, chin, even his left eye, and especially his nose. This green tint contrasting with the vivid pink of his cheeks to create the complementary color effect so characteristic of Van Gogh. Indeed, this hat is so brilliant, the viewer is left wondering whether it is the boundless energy of Nussbaum's youth that electrifies it. His jacket, of what color would you say? Cream white? Is painted in a profusion of vertical strokes in shades of blue, turquoise, lavender, gold, yellow, peach. Even his dark tie, specked with red highlights, almost seems alive, straining to escape its rightful place tucked into the jacket, practically defeating the pearl tie tasked with holding it in. The overall impression is of youthful vitality, barely held in check for the moments necessary to create this self-portrait. So that's when he was 23. And he did the next one 4 years later. And I hope you can zoom in and see a little bit of it. If not, we'll check the images later. By 1931, just 4 years later, when Nussbaum painted the Folly Square, he had intentionally left Van Gogh behind to create a satirical work in a style in ways prescient of his final works, with which we are already familiar. The setting is an urban square, painted primarily in muted tones of gray and brown. The square is a scene of a confrontation, not, as in his later works, between the doomed and death, but rather between young avant-garde artists and the art establishment. The Brandenburg Gate in the back identifies the location as Paris Place in Berlin. In the center, a large group of young artists has gathered, wearing their white smocks and accompanied by their many paintings, piled, leaning, tumbling, and some even apparently floating around them. Nussbaum himself is here, on the far left, clutching a paper, perhaps a manifesto, and a portrait of his parents is visible near the center of the composition. While Nussbaum looks at us, many of the other artists look to the left, where scores of older men in formal black frock coats parade with all the solemnity of a funeral procession into the Prussian Academy of Arts. Putti accompany these ancient academics, waving the Prussian flag, strewing flowers in their path. A flash of gold draws our attention to the back of the painting, where a building is crumbling. Nussbaum's contemporaries would have recognized it as the house of Max Liebermann, leader of the Berlin avant-garde since 1898, but by 1931 considered part of the establishment. Liebermann itself is on the roof, hard at work on a self-portrait, which is being held aloft by the golden statue of Victoria. She's torn herself from her victory column, seen to the right, for the purpose, but in the process has lost her crowning laurel crown. On the ground, another group of men clad in black march by, led by a drummer, again reminiscent of a funeral procession. Nussbaum created this painting at the age of 27 to make a splash in the Berlin art world. As he explained years later, quote, "I went to battle against the abuses of the Berlin Academy with a satirical picture that sharply pilloried the spiritual numbness and limitless incompetence of the old academics. It was an amusing work, which created quite a stir. I abandoned the world of innocence and aimed for greater things." End quote. But knowing what we know of Nussbaum's history today, despite Nussbaum's quote, this painting seems all innocence, a moment when the avant-garde artist and art can take center stage, literally and figuratively, rather than being censored, exiled, and destroyed. And that's what I have. And I apologize if the second image is blurry. I would encourage you to look at it online.
Yeah, you did very well. Cynthia, this is very good. I can make this bigger, but I'm afraid to do it because
Yeah.
I don't know if I could go back. I could go forward, but I don't want the whole thing to disappear.
That's all right. It's easy for people to Google the Folly Square, and I do think it's worth looking. He put so much detail into it, and to think of what. And there are some passages really that seem echoed in his later work, but here it was all about just the avant-garde art, not about life and death. It's interesting how I think his innocence was lost later.
Well, it's interesting to me to see the landscape because some of the ways that he approaches this is very similar to the latter works, in that this painting looks like it's been collaged together from a lot of different scenes, and he's orchestrated this whole thing. It also, in a weird way, reminds me of the artist De Chirico, and I've seen other works of Nussbaum that also made me think of this artist, De Chirico. I think De Chirico is like Dechirico. Does anyone have a question or comment? Okay, so I'm going to.
Oh, go ahead. I was just going to say, I don't know De Chirico, but I'd like to look him up later.
Yes, definitely. So I'm going to go on to the three photographers that I wanted to introduce you to. In the last few classes, I've listed these photographers, and we never seem to get to them. And now I'm even wondering if we're going to get to all three. But I have an idea that if we only hit two, I know the two that we should deal with. So, let's see. So the first photographer is Henri Cartier-Bresson. So it's Henri, Henri, then Cartier, Cartier dash Bresson, Bresson. Cartier-Bresson, Cartier dash Bresson, Bresson. Dates are 1908 to 2004. Now, when I think of his work for myself, and I'm not sure if there's a logic to this, I think of his work and Edward Weston together. I'm not sure if you are a student of photography or a professor of photography, if you would relate these two together. But for some reason or other, I think of them together. So both worked in black and white. If you don't know Edward Weston's photography, you should look it up, because we're not doing that today. But you could look it up to see, maybe I'm right, maybe I'm not right. But anyway, they are two classic photographers. So Edward Weston, his photographs are done on a large format camera, an 8x10 camera. So he walked around with a very large camera. That camera gives a lot of detail. Okay, the negative is 8x10 inches. So, and Edward Weston said that he took the photographs in his brain, in his mind, before taking them with his camera. Cartier-Bresson used a 35mm camera. And I was reading about him before this class, and he said he took the photographs in his mind before he used his camera. Okay. Now, Edward Weston was very involved in the development of the film, the pristine look of the photograph, the cropping, the whole thing was his baby. He developed the photographs, or I think his son developed them. Cartier-Bresson would get a sheet of photographs, a contact sheet of his 35mm photographs, and he would circle the ones he wanted, and someone else developed them. Okay, so you have two divergent points of view in black and white. So in reading about Cartier-Bresson, you'll find a very interesting statement that is repeated often about his photographs, which has to do with the decisive moment in his work. And so he writes about his photography. To me, photography is the simultaneous recognition in a fraction of a second of the significance of an event, as well as a precise organization of forms which give that event its proper expression. Let me read that again. To me, photography is the simultaneous recognition in a fraction of a second of the significance of an event, as well as a precise organization of forms which give that event its proper expression. My translation for Simon, for me, in terms of appreciating his work, a point of insight or poetry within an architectural or spatial setting. A point of insight or poetry within an architectural or spatial setting. So in many of his photographs, you see space and architecture and a point of movement or a point of whimsy or a point of movement or accident. And you'll see this juxtaposition between structure and happenstance. And this photograph, this first one, is an incredible example. Really, absolutely incredible. It almost looks like the windows are echoing the people. This is what Cartier Bresson looked like. He had started out to be a painter, and he drew a great deal. At a certain point, he left photography and went back to drawing. So then I'm going to just go through a bunch of these photographs so you get a sense of what his work looks like. He also said that these photographs are not cropped in any way. They're cropped by what he did. They're not cropped afterwards. And I had the feeling that he thought cropping the photographs was cheating. They're incredibly well composed. In a lot of his photographs, it looks to me like he staked out a position and he waited for a moment. He knew what to wait for, or he was wanting to wait. This is such an amazing photograph. If you think of all the space in it and this parade of people.
Did his photographs have names?
I don't know. They might. I wasn't paying attention to that. I would think they would have names, but I'm not sure.
Simon, I don't understand your drawing the comparison with Weston. They seem so different to me, other than that they work in black and white. Weston, I think of those forms like fruit, the bodies really set up by him. And with Bresson, it's all capturing the moment in real life.
There's an
well, it could be. It's in my head.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not saying that they're alike. I'm saying that they're classic photographers who approached things differently and yet were the best of a certain direction versus the best of another direction.
Mm.
I'm not saying that they're similar.
I think Simon's correct. If you look at Weston's work in Mexico, you'll see a lot of accidental things happening after he sets up his camera. There's a wonderful photograph that he calls the pissing Mexican, where a man is urinating against a wall in a scene that he's created with beautiful framing.
But Sue, getting back to your point, I think that Weston is more controlling.
Yeah.
He's very interested in the rectangle, but these are very much interested in the rectangle. But Weston is controlling the whole thing, whereas this has accidental elements going on. Let's go a little further. I'm very familiar with his work. I've never seen this one before, and I thought include this. Really interesting composition, interesting space. These are a little bit too small, but the one on the right, I think I have later.
Right.
Some of these almost seem like a ballet or a dance scene.
There's also a narrative quality, I think, to them.
Yeah, but a lot of it, it might be narrative, but a lot of it is quite unclear. Someone wanted to say something?
Did you mention where he primarily worked, or did he primarily work in one country?
I think he primarily worked in Paris, but he traveled around.
Do you happen to know if the contact sheets are available?
No, I don't. But it's an interesting question.
Well, it was wonderful to see Robert Frank's contact sheets, to see
Yeah.
the images of the many hundreds of images that he chose.
What he chose and what he didn't choose.
And also the sequence of events that led
Yes.
up to and
Yes.
followed the photograph.
Yes. So there you have a big contrast with Weston. Weston, also another contrast is Weston took very few photographs. And this is many. I think that this is Truman Capote.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Simon, do you know what years of his life he was taking photographs? He lived a very long life.
I would say the last 15 years of his life were devoted to drawing. So he photographed all the way through. This is a photograph of the painter Baltus, or Balthus, and this is Balthus is his wife. The black and white photographs are just so beautiful. I've often thought that there are many really good photographers, but very few great photographers. And this is Matisse. And this is a better photo. The next one is a better photograph than I had before. And this is Giacometti. And he takes many photographs of Giacometti. And they're very, very striking. He was an artist who you almost couldn't take a bad photograph of. He was very striking looking and very, very interesting man.
Well, and
And
this is
speaking-
perfect with
What?
Giacometti because the tall kind of lean trees are very reminiscent of his work. So
Yeah. You should, if you're interested, look up the photographs of Giacometti by Cartier Bresson. And then this man could almost not take a poor photograph. So this is Beckett.
right, Samuel Beckett.
I thought Balthus was Beckett. I was going to say when you said it was Balthus. And then here's Beckett.
Okay, so I'm not sure if I'm going to have time for both of these next photographers. So I'm going to skip ahead. I'm going to skip ahead to this one. And this is August Sander. So August Sander, his dates are 1876 to 1964. 1876 to 1964. So
Is it Sander, Simon?
Sander, yeah. So this is Cartier-Bresson French and August Sander German. So I have in my book collection a slipcase grouping of books of August Sander that is called People of the 20th Century. And in this series, Sander attempts to do a compilation of photographs showing the history of the German people. And he divides the books, or not the books, he divides the subjects up into categories. So the categories are farmers, skilled tradesmen, women, classes and professions, artists, the city, the lost people, homeless, and veterans. I've never seen this compilation of books on sale again, so I just happened upon them, and I like his work a lot, so I bought the whole grouping of them. But if you ever see them, it's a very good set to have. So August Sander, his work relates to Neue Sachlichkeit, or new objectivity. He is very influential as a photographer, and he influenced such people as Walker Evans and Diane Arbus. The images are very curious in that they show a connection between naturalism and formalism. He is delineating reality in an austere way and making it very expressive. The portrait as a mirror of our time. So this is a very well-known photograph, this first one. And this is what Sander looked like. He went all around the country of Germany doing these photographs. So I'm going to leaf through these and comment on a few of them.
Simon, do you have these categorized? Do you know which category Sander would have put this in, or are not all your photographs taken from his collection?
No, I don't. I'm sorry.
Just curious.
Yeah.
Just curious.
So one thing that strikes me about this is that his choice of people and the documentary quality of this and the spearness and austerity in this ends up to be very descriptive and expressive. He's not romanticizing the people. He's
Oh,
being,
this one romantic to me.
well, perhaps, but in degrees, he's really not romanticizing what the people are. He's describing them, and he's not telling you what to think.
That's great.
Here for Veterans Day.
Yeah, this one's a veteran.
Mhm.
This almost makes me think of Diane Arbus and twins.
Yes.
Yeah,
It's amazing how black and white photographs can seem more powerful than color photographs sometimes.
no,
Yes,
they are.
yes,
I-
yes, yeah. The the photograph on the right is almost entering the world of Diane Arbus.
Yeah.
Mhm.
These are obviously from a carnival or a circus.
Yes, yes.
Um, Elaine.
You know, now, if you take a photograph like this, it seems very simple, but it is extremely hard to take a photograph like this.
With an 8x10 camera.
I don't know what kind of camera he used.
Yes.
I just don't know that. But I'm just saying there's a communication that's going on here, and an honesty and a candidness that would elude most people who like photography.
Do you know Dis Farmer?
What?
Do you know the photographer Dis Farmer?
No,
Disfarmer?
no, no.
Oh,
Let me just stay with this. Now this is the painter Otto Dix and his wife.
Oh, he did.
Now this woman here almost looks like a painting of Christian Shad. She almost looks like the painting that is reproduced that is in the restaurant that I described earlier.
At the Neue Gallery. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Questions or comments?
What, did he live in Germany during World War II? Was he Jewish or was he a Nazi?
He was neither.
I don't think he was one or the other. He was, but he lived. I didn't realize he lived till 1984. But he was not. I don't think his work is political. His work is not political.
But was he in Germany during the war? Is that where
Yes,
he
yes,
worked?
yes, yes. I'm pretty sure. Yes.
Most of his negatives were destroyed toward the end of the war in the bombing of Cologne. Most of his commercial negatives. He was a portrait photographer.
She's holding her cigarette between those two fingers where she can't drop it.
No, that's not right.
Oh no, it wasn't those two fingers?
No.
Oh,
All
I
right,
guess I counted wrong.
Let me try.
Oh wait.
Let me try to do the third one that I wanted to show you. So the third one is is Brassai. So Brassai, Brassai, 1899 to 1984. So Brassai originally was Hungarian. His name is not Brassai, but his name is Julius Halaz, Halazz. He was born in, I think, Brasso in Hungary, and the name Brassai comes from Brasso. He photographs Paris. He lives in Paris. He photographs Paris. The light and nighttime drama of Paris. His work almost looks like film noir.
Yeah.
A superfine black and white drama.
Great.
I have this quote from Henry Miller. The desire which Brassai so strongly evinces, a desire not to tamper with the object, but regard it as it is. Was this not provoked by a profound humility, a respect and reverence for the object itself?
Hmm.
Let me read that again after you see a bunch of these. So there are not too many that I have of his work, but I sort of felt it was connected with Manet and Degas, and even with Nussbaum and the Beckman world and Christian Schad.
Are these slightly out of focus, or am I just so used to looking at like high definition television that, I'm expecting more, crispness?
To
You're in
me,
focus.
these look in focus.
Yeah.
I don't know. To me, these look in focus.
Okay.
This is in focus.
Wow.
Oh, that's great.
Very film noir.
These don't appear to be candid.
What?
I'm saying these are set up with lighting. It's hard to see them as grab shots of the Cartier Bresson type.
Right.
I'm not sure if you're right. I don't know if they're set up with lighting.
You know, he might have the
He might-
flash.
He might have manipulated it so it's lit. I'm not sure.
You know, photographers in nightclubs use the flash, a handheld flash.
Okay, it's possible.
Depends a lot on the time when these were done.
Mm.
The film was very insensitive. It's very difficult to photograph under those conditions under natural lighting.
Is this Bonnard?
This is Bonnard.
Yeah.
Wow.
You could see how he worked
Right.
with the canvases right on the wall.
Right.
Rita, do you think that this is lit in a special way, or it's something that he has developed in the studio?
No, I think it's definitely lit in a special way. It might be a flash. And he could also, did he develop his own photographs? You know, he could certainly enhance the light and dark in his dark.
That's my instinct. That's
Yeah.
my instinct.
Entirely, there still has to be some illumination to work with.
Yeah.
Ugh.
Hmm. I do see a little bit of what Peter's saying, why Peter asked that question about the focus. I think these feel generally a little bit less crisp or clear to me than the other two photographers. Or big parts of them do.
You know, I will say under low light conditions, it's much harder to be finely focused.
Right. Yeah.
But it's a softness that it gives to the photograph. That's
Wow.
beautiful.
Mm-hmm.
So if I was more clever about doing this type of presentation, I would show these two pictures next to one another.
Part of the problem here is that
Wait a minute, just stop for a second. I would show these two pictures next to one another. This one and this one.
Hmm.
This one.
Why?
Why?
They seem so different.
Oh.
They seem to come from a different well of understanding.
Yes.
It would be important again to know the time when these were made, because in photography, technology is everything, and it affects profoundly the image.
I'm going to guess 30s, 1930s. That's my guess. So for next time, send me 2 of these images, or which you can write about, or send one of these images and another image of any of the artists that we've already talked about, going back to the beginning of the class. So
One
but
photo.
you need to send me the 2 images to start with. You can write about it afterwards, but you have to send me the 2 images. And don't send them too late, because we are putting this together on Monday, like early evening on Monday. So once we put this together, it's too difficult to add more. So I would send the pictures to start with. The next class is the last class, and I thought to use these 3 photographers because I had been mentioning it for like the last 2 or 3 classes, and I sort of felt funny that we never got to this. So these 3 are amazing photographers, all 3 of them. Any questions? No?
I was thinking, you said we could write about two photos,
Yes,
or we can write about one photo and one
Painting.
of the other paintings or drawings that we've
Yes.
seen. Okay.
Yes, I thought to open it up more, but you have a lot of things to look at. later tonight, I will send you all of the images that we used the whole term. So
Oh,
if you want to take the photographs out, you just have to click the image. It'll get bigger or it'll open up, and then slide it over to your desktop. And then put it on your desktop and send it to me. Send it, two of them. So I have all those images, and it's actually a nice record. So so next week is the last week, and any other questions?
No.
This is a very, very substantial class, a lot of things, very deep. So thank you very much. Thank you. Okay. All
Good
right.
night.
All right.
night.
Take care of yourself.
Good night.
Thanks,
Good night,
Simon.
everybody.
Okay.
Thank you.
Everybody,
Thank you.
Okay.
take care.
Bye.
Okay. Bye-bye.
Get out of here.
Bye.
I
Night.
can't go here and leave.
Bye.
Bye. Bye.